Are you starting to ease into commodities or waiting for a general pullback? Well, I eased into commodities in March of 2020. So, uh, yeah, I just I kind of added to my position. I changed around a little bit. I had to sell to that coal position because the ETF I have, or I had, it went up. I don't know what it did, tripled or quadrupled, and then they dissolved it for. I mean, if that's not a great contrarian indicator, but I started investing in commodities back then. So, but yeah, as far as adding to the position, I would. I'm personally waiting for a pullback. I think what we're seeing in the yield curves right now would indicate that there's a reasonable probability that we could see equity and commodity prices come down for a variety of reasons, especially with the Fed continuing to tighten because of inflation. I think they'll tighten until they break the market. But long term, I think we're in a super cycle that started in April or May of 2020, and those usually go 10 or 15 years. So no, they don't go up in a straight line, and sometimes they have huge pullbacks. But for me, that's just going to be a buying opportunity. I mean, I was even thinking through it this weekend, and I just don't see how commodity prices aren't higher in 5 years, unless they just take or 3 years, unless they take a dip down because we have a big economic shock or a shock to the financial markets, like the stock market. We have some huge black swan event but I don't think they'll stay down for a very long time. I mean, you've got to look at the decisions that are being made by the Western governments. So, as an example, I just saw, in fact, I just tweeted it out. I can reference it right here just momentarily. You guys bear with me. Yeah. So, according to a couple different news sources that I have seen, German retail chains, and this is, I think their biggest one is Aldi, if I'm not mistaken. So the grocery stores uh, have announced that from Monday forward, they will increase food prices by 20 to 50%. Now, I'm assuming this is accurate because I have seen it in a couple places. It may not be. We'll have to see or wait to see how this plays out. But this is an example of governments just and maybe you got to say the people in society at large willing to pay just an unbelievable price to virtue signal. That's what we're dealing with here. Because you look at what sanctions are. Sanctions, I mean, look at what they're doing to Russia, right? Look at the vlogs that I've encouraged you guys to watch. Now, are they affecting the individual? Yeah, they are. They are. Is it going to stop Putin from doing whatever he wants to? No, it's not. Not at all. Not in the least bit. And the only thing that sanctions usually do is they just hurt the innocent people on both sides. And that's exactly what we're seeing in Germany. I think we'll see the same type of price increases with food here in the United States, maybe to a lesser degree, hopefully to a lesser degree. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a headline like this in the United States in a month or two. And so what that tells you is if you're a politician, we've got to assume their number one objective is to be reelected. So having that assumption, then you've got this balancing act, right? You've got a society that wants to virtue signal, and they want to do anything against Russia and Putin because they're hyper emotional. So they want to feel like they're doing something, even if they're not. They don't want to look into, is this actually having a benefit? Is this actually deterring Putin? Is this actually deterring Russia from continuing what they're doing in Ukraine. They don't want to think about that. They don't want to get into the nuance. It's just like the monkey, with the hands over the ears and over the eyes. They just want to ignore that because that gets in the way of making it feel like they're doing something, even though in reality they're not. They're just hurting themselves. So what's astonishing is the level or the price, the cost that society is willing to pay just to feel good, or the willingness to lower their standard of living just so they can feel better about themselves. So this is, you're the politician, you're like, okay, well, if I don't virtue signal, then these people aren't going to vote for me. So they're willing to take an extreme amount of pain. So I'm going to keep giving them the pain until they're like, no, this is too much. Now the prices are too high. I can't put food on the table. Now we don't like the sanctions because we realize the cost is too great. And now I think, and once they get to that point, then they'll start to rationalize it by then looking into the economics of it and seeing, oh yeah, this actually doesn't work. So therefore, we can pull back these sanctions and still feel good about it because we're following the economics, just like we're following the science. Same type of deal. So, I mean, having said that, let's just say that what's happening in Russia, Ukraine ended tomorrow. Is this insanity with the Western societies going to change anytime soon? I don't think so. I think they're just going to go from one hysteria or outrage to the next hysteria, outrage. We went from the cerveza sickness, we go to Russia, Ukraine, and it's going to be something else. And each time we go to the next form of outrage or the next topic of outrage, it's going to, I think it's going to grow. The virtue signaling is going to grow. The cancel culture is going to grow. The mob mentality is going to continue to grow. I think this is just what you get in a fourth turning. So what's my point? How does that play into commodities? Because even once we're done with Russia, Ukraine, hopefully it ends quickly, I think people get right back into wanting to feel good, regardless of what the benefit is or perceived benefit. They're not even going to look into that. And they're going to get right back onto this ESG movement. I think the politicians, the global elite especially, that want the societies to reduce their consumption levels and population growth, and therefore the standard of living and the economic activity and whatnot, they're going to, in the name of climate change, of course, they're going to push for these countries to go to more green energy, right? So what that means is less investment into supply of fossil fuels, which at the end of the day, the demand is very inelastic. You can sit there and, again, this is what we're seeing now. You can virtue signal all you want, and at the end of the day, your hot water heater doesn't care about your virtue signaling. The grocery store doesn't care about your virtue signaling. The farmer producing your food doesn't care about that. They just care about the bottom line, and people are going to have to pay the price. But my point there is I think people are going to be willing to pay a higher price. They're going to be willing to reduce their standard of living. And therefore, you're going to see less and less and less investment go into oil, coal. I think they'll start to ease into your nuclear. That's so nuclear is with uranium. I think they'll kind of gravitate over there. But that will probably be a gradual process, and there's going to be a lot of pushback in that as well. So this is kind of how I see the world moving forward. And that, among other reasons, is why I think we're in this commodity super cycle that will have ups and downs. And I'm waiting for another downturn in the short term and to take advantage of kind of adding to the position and express kind of that long-term view.